What is up, guys? CT Kidney here, and today I'm gonna bring you the spec I legitimately thought did not or wasn't gonna make it into the game. So the Augmentation Evoker, the support spec, the controversy of that has been coming around. The third Evoker spec, Demon Hunters, eat your heart out because you're not getting one. We get one first. So how is this actually going to work? How is this support spec going to work? I'm gonna take you from the ground up on how exactly this spec works currently on the PTR, the rotation, and all the intricacies and cool things you can do with this spec. I'm going to try to all encompass it in one video, so hopefully it doesn't get changed too much so I don't have to make another one, but we'll find out. So it's a damage spec, so you're going to queue as a damage dealer, right? And something very interesting that they did with this spec that I'll bring up later is going to make more sense when you see damage dealer instead of like healer, right? So here's how this works. It all revolves around this buff called Ebb and Might, and it's going to give your 4 nearest party members or raid members increased primary stat equal to 14% of your own. And it gives your Eruption, which is our essence spender, 28% more damage for 11.8 seconds. Now, that time, the duration goes up with our mastery. So let's read our mastery. Casting an empower spell grants shifting sands to 2 allies preferring damage dealers, increasing their versatility by 20% for 12 seconds. The duration of shifting sands, breath of eons, and your other helpful aura spells is increased by 17.7%. So mastery is going to be insane for this spec. We're not going to get much value from crit. We're probably not going to get much value from haste. Versatility is going to be okay, but we're gonna be wanting mastery for the most part because it's going to increase the duration on our buffs and debuffs. So how does this spec work? Right, you keep up Ebb and Might through doing your rotation correctly, and it's not a very complicated rotation. It's very easy. The intricacies and complexity of this spec don't come from your rotation. It comes from timing your abilities well to match up with your allies so you can buff them more, which is a whole new level of complexity that doesn't exist in any other spec currently. So here's how the talents are going to look. Let's get into it. So Eruption, like I said, is our essence spender, replaces Disintegrate. It's going to do damage split between the target and nearby enemies, and it increases the duration of Ebb and Might by 1 second. So you can see we're starting with the increased duration of Ebb and Might. And then we have Essence Burst. We know what that does. Then we get Quell, or we get Interrupt Improvement, Imposing Presence like we normally have, or Inner Radiance like we have in Devastation. Ricocheting Pyroclast. Eruption deals 30% more damage per enemy struck, up to 150%. So it's going to do a lot more damage the more enemies there are, right? And you might be thinking, well, we're a damage spec. Of course we have damage increasing talents. Like, why wouldn't we? Like I said, it's going to come together later. Essence Attunement, duh, we know what that does. And then we have Pupil of Alexstrasza or Echoing Strike. Basically, which one of your abilities do you want to cleave? Pupil of Alexstrasza is going to cast 1 additional time, targeting an additional enemy for 100% of the time. Or for 100% of the damage. So that's just going to be really good because instead of 1 Living Flame, you're going to cast 2. Pupil of Alexstrasza is going to be pretty good. Echoing Strike is a random chance, right? So Azure Strike has a 10% chance per target hit to echo and cast again. Truthfully, I think damage-wise and just utility-wise, Pupil of Alexstrasza is just going to be way better. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't take it. Echoing Strike is just a random chance. Pupil of Alexstrasza is always working, so yeah. Upheaval. This is going to be our empowered spell for the Black Dragonflight. And it's going to basically knock people up. And the longer you charge the spell, the bigger the radius of the knockup. And it's also going to increase the duration of Ebb and Might by 3 seconds. It does the same damage no matter what rank you're at. So on single target or on boss fights, just send her at 1 rank. That's how it's going to go. This is the coolest ability in the freaking game. Hands down, don't care what anybody says. You can at me in the comments if you think I'm wrong, but I'm not. Breath of Eons. replaces deep breath. Y'all know I love me some deep breath. If you've been watching the channel, you know I love me some deep breath. So when I saw this thing replace deep breath, I was like, ooh, it better be good. And damn, did it impress me. Okay, so check this out. You deep breath, exposing temporal wounds on enemies in your path for 11.8 seconds. And remember, that's increased by mastery. Temporal wounds accumulates 21% of damage dealt by your allies affected by ebb and might, then critically strikes for that amount in arcane damage, and applies ebb and might for 5 seconds. So this is going to increase your ebb and might right now. This thing is fantastic. So remember what I said earlier, the intricacy comes from you being able to time your abilities well with your allies. So you want to time this with any increased damage phase that the boss takes. You want to time this with any giant cooldowns. You want to time this with lust. You want to time this with lust. Ladies and gentlemen, this thing's gonna murder. This is such a cool ability. I really love, it's like a touch of the magi kind of thing. The more damage you can fit into this window, the better. And the fact that mastery increases the duration is just like, it's so fun. This is a really great ability. Defy Fate, we get a cheat death now. Fatal damage, fuck that. We don't take fatal damage. We're bronze dragons. We don't take fatal damage. We say not today, tomorrow. Except never, because we don't die. Yeah, I mean, a cheat death, fantastic. You heal yourself over 9 seconds after you would take fatal damage. Like, hello, that's fantastic. So you just don't die, and then you recover half your health. Awesome. And you heal nearby people. So if you were to die, it would heal people and yourself, and you don't die. Fantastic. Such a good ability. Timelessness. This is going to be a buff you put on somebody that reduces their threat by 30% for 35 seconds. So whoever you think this would go on well, Devastation Evokers is definitely my number one place to put this, because they just do so much dang threat, and we need that 30% threat reduction. Seismic Slam. This is going to make your landslide stun enemies who are mid-air. Now remember, Upheaval is a knockup. So we can quite literally take Terror of the Skies, use it with Breath of Aeons to stun everything for 3 seconds, and then knock things up into the air with Upheaval, and then stun them again for another 4 seconds with Seismic Slam. We're going to have so much AoE CC. We're going to be so good in Mythic Plus. This is fantastic. This is so awesome. And then Volcanism. Mandatory, you have to take this. Eruption's essence cost is reduced by 1. Otherwise, it's 3, and it's just way too steep. You have to take this. It's just, you can't not take it. Chrono Ward. Breath of Eons grants allies a shield for 100% of the damage dealt. This is going to be really good if you can time it before a giant AoE attack. Like if you can time it before any massive raid-wide damage that's gonna go out, and make it so that your Breath of Eons is going to shield everybody when it expires. Now, the only thing is, I don't know if it's I believe it's when your Breath of Eons expires, everybody gets the shield for the damage dealt, which, remember, it always critically strikes, so it's going to do a lot of damage, which means it's going to give everybody a lot of shields. So I'm pretty sure it only buffs the people affected with your Ebb and Might, because if it buffed everybody in your party or everybody in your raid, it'd be absolutely massive, and you have to take it, right? But I mean, it's a fun ability anyway, so I'm okay with it. Perilous Fate. This is a PvP talent. Reduces movement speed and attack speed by 50% for whatever your mastery says seconds. Definitely, that screams PvP talent to me. Stretch time. While flying during Breath of Eons, 50% of damage you would take is instead dealt over 10 seconds, so it's like a little stagger effect for the damage you would take. It turns it into a defensive, basically. I don't think it'll be very useful, because one, we already have a cheat death, and there's also another talent I'll get to later, which is going to make us even more tanky, so I don't even think this will be useful. Plus, you wouldn't ever want to use Breath of Aeons for a defensive. You want to use that for the damage. Then we take Geomancy. Azure Strike reduces the remaining cooldown of Landslide by 1 second per target hit. So this is going to be okay because, I mean, Landslide's just a root, right? It's just gonna root. So in Mythic Plus, this will probably be meh. You probably don't want to take this. You'll probably go into, these three are all pretty meh in my opinion, but this is probably the best one. Bestow Wyrnstone, I don't know how to say this. Basically, you conjure a pair of Wyrnstones, one for your ally and one for yourself, and at any time your ally can just decide to teleport to you. Yeah, I mean, a free blink. My priest brothers would love this. Now you can do this and then you can also rescue. So you're going to be able to move a lot of people very quickly, which is great. Okay, next up is Blistering Scales. And this is going to basically be a Thorns ability. You're going to put a shield on somebody, or put a buff on somebody that's going to put 20 explosive dragon scales on them, and it increases their armor, which is great because we wear mail, so we already have a good amount of armor, but two, we have tempered scales, which increases our armor by 75%. So we're going to be giving a lot of armor to somebody, the tank, and you're just never going to take this off the tank. This is going to be a set and forget talent, except for when it's not, and I'll get into that later. But it's just going to do damage whenever your tank gets hit, in AoE as well, so it's pretty cool. We got stances, ladies and gentlemen. Draconic attunements. Black attunement, you and your 4 nearest allies have 5% increased health, or bronze attunement, you and your 4 nearest allies have 10% increased movement speed. I'm going to be in the health one 99.9% of the time. I'm sure the speed one is going to get some use. It's basically like you're playing Lucio and you want to choose between healing or speed. I'm going to go with the health the whole time, pretty much. Spatial Paradox. This is going to give your friendly healer, your friendly neighborhood healer, the ability to heal while moving for the duration of whatever your mastery says. And it also increases the range of most of their spells by 40 yards. So they're going to get more range and they're going to be able to cast while moving. Unless you can communicate this to your healer immediately, I mean, it's going to be fantastic, I'm sure. There's a lot of movement in the new raid, so being able to do this to a healer, especially in some of those big burst phases, is going to be awesome. And then we get to our choice node, Unyielding Domain. Upheaval cannot be interrupted. Excuse me. And has an additional 10% chance to critically strike. This, again, PvP talent. Screams PvP talent to me because can't be interrupted. Or Upheaval deals 50% increased damage to the primary target and launches them higher. So, again, 50% more damage on our charge spell. Yeah, I'll take that. That's awesome. And then we have a choice between Molten Blood or Regenerative Chitin. Regenerative Chitin is just more stacks for your Blistering Scales. And also, whenever you cast Eruption, it restores 1 scale. So that's just for uptime on Blistering Scales. So you can only have it on 1 person at a time. So here's the thing though, you'll want to make sure that you're switching, especially in Raid. In Mythic Plus, it doesn't matter at all because you only have 1 tank. But if you have 2, when you have 2 tanks in Raid, you're going to want to switch off Blistering Scales based on which tank currently has the boss. Otherwise, it'll be doing nothing. Or Molten Blood, which is a shield that you put on somebody when you apply Blistering Scales, but it's larger the lower HP they are. So think of it, again, it could be really good for like a spot shield that you could put on a tank that's like really low, or just a party member that's really low to stop them from dying. Both have their uses. I'm probably going to go with Regenerative Chitin 99% of the time because, it's more damage. Let's face it. I love damage. Power Nexus. It's Power Nexus. We know what Power Nexus does. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the defensive. So Obsidian Scales, which is our defensive, activates Black Attunement and amplifies it to increase maximum health by 20%. So you get to increase you and your 4 nearest allies' HP pools by 20% by activating Obsidian Scales. Or Hover activates Bronze Attunement and amplifies it to increase movement speed by 40%. for 4.7 seconds. So, like, okay, first of all, hover and obsidian scales, they stack. You can do both at the same time, so don't worry about that. You won't cancel one out. It is awesome. It is actually awesome. We actually get our defensive to do something good, and that's a really great feeling. Next up is Plot the Future. Breath of Eons, cooldown is reduced by 10 seconds. Love it. And now we get into some healing, some more healing choices. So over here on this side, the left side of the tree seems to be like, that's your tank buffing spot. This is where you buff your tank. The middle is like where you buff your DPS, and the left or to the right is where you buff healers. So Emerald Blossom increases the target's healing received by 3 to 6%. Cool, for whatever your mastery duration is. Okay, and back on the tank side, Reactive Hide. Each time Blistering Scales explodes, it deals 10% more damage for 14.1 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. So it can do 100% more damage, which is really good if you can keep this rolling. Hopefully you can. Hoarded Power, we know what Hoarded Power does. Ignition Rush, mandatory. It's going to reduce the cast time of Eruption by 30% when we use it with Essence Burst. And now we get into some cool stuff. So Prescience grants an ally 3% crit for whatever your mastery says. It has a 10-second cooldown. So you can put this on 2 people and have 2 of them rolling at the same time. And it's so good, it's just raw stats, right? It's fantastic. And then you can take Prolonged Life. Your effects that extend Ebonmite also extend Symbiotic Bloom, meaning everybody will just get more healing received for basically ever, which is fantastic. Then we get Momentum Shift. Consuming Essence Burst grants you 5% intellect for 8 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. The reason this is fantastic is because Ebonmite grants you and your allies 14% of your primary stat. If you get more primary stat with Momentum Shift, you give more primary stat with Ebonmite. Just a really solid, good attack, or good move, good talent, whatever it is. Next up is Inferno's Blessing. Fire Breath grants the Inferno's Blessing for whatever your mastery says to you and your allies affected by Ebonmite, giving their damaging attacks and spells a high chance to deal more fire damage. You'll want to pair this with Blessing of Eons, and the reason why is because it's just more damage for Blessing of Eons to copy. It's awesome. This is the coolest ability, or one of the coolest abilities I think that exists currently for the spec. So it's called Time Skip, aka One Piece, aka Dragon Ball Z, aka Naruto. Whatever time skip you want to run with, this is it. So you surge forward in time, causing your spells to cool down 1000% faster for 2 seconds. You can extend this with Tomorrow Today, the capstone, by 1 second. So you'll have 3 seconds of reducing your cooldowns by 1000%. And that's just so cool, because you can use all of your cooldowns and then almost immediately use them all again. Absolutely wild, honestly, absolutely wild. And then next up is Accretion. Eruption reduces the remaining cooldown on Upheaval by 1 second, which is cool. It's fine. Then we get Anachronism. Prescience has a 35% chance to grant Essence Burst. Sure, I mean, we're casting it every 10 seconds anyway. We might as well try to get an Essence Burst out of it. I think it's pretty cool. And now we get to the capstones. These capstones are kind of insane. I like this one. Mote's a possibility, but I don't think it's practical. Essence abilities have a chance to form a mote of diverted time near you. Anyone who comes in contact with the mote gains 10 seconds of reduced cooldown to their major ability. So they'll get reduced cooldown to like Meta. They'll get reduced cooldown to like Spirit Link Totem. They'll get reduced cooldown to a Shield Wall, something like that. The issue is, I don't know if anybody remembers Lightwell. if you ever played a priest, people had to stop what they were doing to look around and find the Lightwell and then go click on it just to get healed. This is the same thing, but to get their cooldown reduced by 10 seconds. Now, you can circumvent this by standing in melee, and they'll just plop out, and melee will get them. But if you're not near anybody, this is a pretty useless talent. So you have to, if you're gonna take this talent, you have to basically be standing in melee, for it to be useful. Doesn't mean it's not good, right? Because I mean, 10% reduced cooldown, or 10 seconds of reduced cooldown can be fantastic for a lot of people. But the issue is it can also desync their cooldowns and trinkets and whatnot. So it may not be that useful. It depends on the interworkings of whatever class picks it up, you know. May not be the greatest. I don't think it's super practical, but you know, it might be cool. And then Font of Magic, we know what Font of Magic does. Personally, I don't think it should be a capstone, but you know, whatever. And then we get to Tomorrow Today, and Interwoven Threads is the one I didn't talk about earlier. So this is just reducing the cooldown on quite literally every ability you have by 15%. Every ability you have is reduced by 15% now. Pretty awesome. I think Interwoven Threads is probably going to be the place to go instead of Tomorrow Today. But I did find out that if you take Tomorrow Today, you can use Breath of Eons, and then after you can start Lust with Breath of Eons, and then you can get another Breath of Eons in during Lust if you take Tomorrow Today. And you'd get 2 during Lust. That would be insane. That would be totally insane. I think it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see what people do with this. Personally, I like Time Skip with Tomorrow Today better. But that's just me. And next up, we're going to have Overlord. Breath of Eons casts an eruption at the first 3 enemies struck. Cool. I mean, you know, Eruption reduces the remaining cooldown of Upheaval, which is our charge spell. Cool. Awesome. Works out. Does pretty good. And also, remember, casting Upheaval, or casting Eruption, increases the duration of Ebb and Might. So, Breath of Eons already increases the duration of Ebb and Might by 5 seconds. And now if you use Overlord, it'll increase it by 8 seconds because it will cast 3 eruptions. So Breath of Eons is going to be your one of your biggest extenders, really, for Ebb and Might, if you choose to take this talent. You could also go with Prescience, and the last talent I'm going to consider, I'm not going to take Font of Magic. Definitely would take this one, and that is going to be Faded Mirror. This one is pretty interesting, so check this out. Prescience grants the ally a chance for their spells and abilities to echo their damage or healing, dealing 15% of the damage, or of the amount again. So there's a chance for, if let's say your Warlock throws a Chaos Bolt, there's a 15% chance for that Chaos Bolt to just get cloned and do 15% of the damage again. Let's say, you know, whatever ability you want could get copied. And this brings me into, now that we're done with the talents, this brings me into the intricate thing about this spec that I wanted to bring up, is that because it's a damage dealing spec, right, I'm going to show you real quick what the damage is going to look like. Okay, so let's check out, with all of this, what our damage is. All right, how good is our damage going to be? Let's check this out. Okay, so you're going to want to, this is going to be the rotation, by the way. The rotation stays the same whether you're in single target or AoE, pretty much. So here's how it's going to go. You're going to want to put up Ebb and Might, and then you're going to Breath of Eons to match your allies' cooldowns. You're going to want to make sure Blistering Scales is up on the tank. And I'm going to take Tomorrow Today as well. I'm going to put Time Skip here. So here's how it's going to work. Ebb and Might into Breath of Eons into your Empower spells into Eruption spam, making sure that you have Blistering Scales up on your tank. I am not a tank. I do not have a tank here, so I won't be putting Blistering Scales up. So here's how it's going to look. And then we're just spamming eruption. Just keep on spamming eruption. And then we're going to hit time skip. And we're going to do it all over again. Now, the reason I'm not using Ebon Might again at the moment is because I don't need to. It will not add more duration to it. It has a cap on it, so it won't add more duration. Now that you see it's about to fall off and I can get like a pandemic on it, I'm going to hit Ebon Might. You can see the maximum duration is 20 seconds. You cannot get more than 20 seconds, so make sure you're not overcapping on time. And then I'm gonna hit Breath of Eons again. Like, see, this is the entire rotation. You're just using spells off cooldown and trying to keep your Ebon Might up. And then you'd be putting prescience on everybody, giving them more crit, and we're gonna make sure Ebon Might's up. We're gonna go ahead and use our spells, use our empower spells, sorry, and just keep throwing living flames. Make sure blistering scales is remaining up. Right, I'm just gonna pretend that I'm a tank here. Throw blistering scales up, and we got prescience. Okay, and that's pretty much the rotation. Honestly, not very complicated. Like I said, the intricacy of this spec comes from your ability to use, your supportive spells to the best of their ability. That's how you're going to get the most damage out of this spec. And when I say the most damage, I mean your damage. So what I mean by that is, if you are in a group, and I've tested this is how it works. If you are in a group or a raid, the damage that allies get from your Ebon Might, the damage that allies contribute to your Breath of Eons, the damage that any buff or debuff you put on the target or an ally gets calculated as your damage. It is not calculated as their damage, it is calculated as your damage, which was a big mentality shift for me on this spec. Big mentality shift for me on this spec. Because I want to be on top of the DPS meter. I want to at least, be competitive, right? And I couldn't be competitive. I couldn't be competitive at all. With this damage. I mean, look, I'm doing 47k solo in AoE. Like, that's horrible. That's absolutely atrocious. But if I'm in a Mythic Plus, or if I'm in a raid, my damage like triples, doubles, because I get those buffs that I put on people. I get those debuffs that everybody else contributes to. Calculated as my damage. And that's the cool part about this spec is, yes, it is a damage dealer. Solo, you will not do you'll do no damage solo. You need other people to contribute to your damage, right? They are doing the damage, but it counts as yours. And that's the cool part about this spec. Anyway, that's the rotation. Those are the talents. Let me know what you guys think, because honestly, I'm very excited for this spec. I honestly think I might switch to it. Like, it's really cool, especially if they keep, like I said, the whole supportive spells count as your damage. If they keep that and I actually have a chance to be on top of the meter with this thing, I think it would be pretty cool. What do you guys think? I hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.